Hey, what's up, y'all? Today, I'm gonna give you a step-by-step tutorial for how to create a human face. This is something I see a lot of people struggle with, and maybe you do too, because if you do this wrong, then you're definitely gonna create a derpy, muppety looking version of a human being, and I know that you can do better than that, and here's how. Let's jump into this. All right, y'all, so to start this one off, what you're gonna wanna do is make sure that you have the right shapes for the human face. So the basic shape for the human head is gonna be just an oval, okay? So with this, definitely make sure that you're not making anything that's perfectly round. It's not a circle. If you're gonna do that, that's really great for creating a Sesame Street character, but definitely not for creating a realistic human face. All right, so to start off this process, the first thing you're gonna wanna do is draw out your proportions. So here they are as such. The exact middle of the face right here, this is going to be your eye line. So just to teach you a few things about human proportions, the eyes are the anatomical middle of your face. I find it also helpful just to go ahead and create a straight line all the way down it as well. And this is gonna be your center line for your face, okay? Now, halfway in between the middle of the eyes, and by the way, this is the middle, it's not the top, not the bottom of the eyes, the dead middle of your eyes there. In between the middle of your eyes and the bottom of the chin is going to be the nose. So I'm gonna make a line right here for this as well. This is gonna be where my nose is. And then between the bottom of the nose and the bottom of the chin is gonna be where the lips part. So it's always half. Just remember, it's half and then half and then half. All right, so our next step here, after I've drawn out my proportion lines, is real quick, before I jump into this next step, I just wanna reinforce this curvature right here. So you should have some kind of slight roundness to the face. You don't want it to bump out too much, like this back part I think is a little bit too much rounded, but just a slight curve here, because remember, your face is totally curved in all dimensions. So definitely make sure there's a little bit of curvature here. So now for my next step, what I wanna do is I wanna build up some areas that are gonna give me some more height and depth. So just to explain a few parts here, and I'm supported with the picture I'm gonna put right up here for y'all. When I look at it from profile, what I should see coming out the highest will be the very tip of the nose, somewhere out around here. Second would be the brow. The brow is gonna be typically your second level of depth, and then third will typically be the lips. So what I'm about to do here is I'm gonna create just a nice simple cylinder, use it for the nose. I'm gonna create a slab for here. I'm gonna create a couple of really silly, derpy looking lips made out of two simple coils that are gonna go and serve right here as my lips. I'm also gonna put on a little tiny chin piece right here. So here we go. Like I always say, art is a very ugly process. And in its rough sculpt, yes, this should look quite disturbing. But right here, some beautiful things are starting to happen. So I do have my brow lifted out here. I have my nose peak at the highest. I've got my lips going. I also added on some little cheeks. People forget about the cheeks a lot. The way the depth should work again is that it should go nose, brow, lips, and then cheeks. So make sure, this will help to make sure that my person doesn't have their eyes bulging like I just hit them in the back of the head with the baseball bat. So now from here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna smooth this in, and I'm going to then go ahead and I'm going to define out what does the jawline of this look like. And we're gonna see this start to come together pretty well. So definitely don't judge this yet. It should look ugly. If not, you're focusing on the wrong things too early. So let's jump into this. All right, so as y'all are seeing me do this, a couple things I just want to explain. So with this, I'm just using a brush, and as I'm adding clay onto this, I'm not going to score this. I don't really have an end game in mind for this at the moment, but you absolutely should score every single time you're going to add anything on to prevent your clay from exploding. You're also going to notice me add on the chin at this phase too. I forgot to do that, even though I said I would at the last part. Sorry about that. Don't hold it against me now. As far as the cheeks go too, definitely make sure that you're being very cognizant of how thick they are, because if they're too chunky, then your person's gonna look like they're plus size, and if you're not meaning or intending to do that, then you just wanna be very, very careful of that. So y'all will also notice while I'm doing this process, that I've completely ignored a major part of the anatomy of the nose, which is the nostrils. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna add that on later, but I'm not gonna do it right now because it's not important to do that right now just yet, okay? All right, y'all, so as you were watching me draw out the angles of the face, so a couple things I wanna just point out to you, which is first off, you should have 3 angles going here. You can very much think of this just like Madonna's Vogue, if you're familiar with that. If I'm dating myself, I'm sorry, just go with me on this. So basically there should be an angle from the bottom of the chin to the bottom of the jawbone, and then it should angle up and out towards the temple area and then back in again. So from here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a little loop tool and I'm gonna carve this down in a way to reveal the full form of my face. So in this next phase, after I've gone ahead and I've scooped away all the extra stuff that I no longer need, you're gonna see me just quickly give it a nice smooth out. So I wanna keep everything nice and round. You always wanna make sure that your face is totally round, or else again, I promise you, it's gonna look really strange, really, really, really derpy. Also, you're gonna notice me then take away a little bit more of kind of the back of the skull area because I think that this looks big and blocky. So now for my next trick here, you see that I've gone ahead and I've marked some places for the ears. I'm not gonna cover how to do ears in this video. If there is something that you'd like to see, go ahead and drop it down below in the comments. But now what I am gonna do is I'm just gonna draw out where is the jawline on this from the side, okay? And this is a really important step because if I don't do this, then I'm gonna miss out on a lot of depth for the back of the skull here. All right, so now that I've gone ahead and drawn this out, what I definitely want to do is subtract some clay here because there should be a discernible level of depth difference between where the jawline is and where the rest of the head, skull, and neck exists. So right here, I definitely don't need all of this. This will eventually be neck when I go ahead and I add on a neck in a future step here. But I am going to go ahead and I'm just going to level this off a little bit, carve away some of this, and then we'll press on from here. All right, so now that you can see that I've gone ahead and I've defined out my jawline here, well, let's move ahead to the eyes. You'll notice that I've definitely avoided the eyes for the time being. Now is my time to shine for these eyes. So the way I recommend that you should definitely approach the eyes is you want to treat them as if there's no eyeball in it and it's just a socket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the back of a rounded brush. Definitely make sure it's rounded like this. Don't use one that has a flat edge or else this effect is not going to work out. And right near what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and push in. I'm just going to spin that around a little bit so that I get a nice eye socket happening here. Now remember that your eye socket is much, much bigger than your actual eyeball. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of make this look like a skull. I'm going to repeat this on the other side now. All right, so here you can see that I've gone ahead and pushed in. I noticed that I pushed in this one a little bit too far, and I did that just to show you, by the way, that if you push in too far, it's gonna make the preceding steps a little trickier, but it's fine. I can go ahead and I can just put some clay into there and fill it back in before I move on to my next step, just like such. So in my next step, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna drop some eyeballs in there. There we go, that's looking good. So for this step, let me show you how this is going. So when you create the eyeball, a couple things that you do and you don't want to do. So first off, a mistake would definitely be to go ahead and create an eyeball that is perfectly the size of your socket and go ahead and put it in there. I promise you this, that if you do this, your person looks horrified, and again, they look like they just got knocked in the back of the head with a 2x4 and their eyes bulging out of their socket. It's weird looking. So the actual size that it should be half the size of the socket itself. So when I go ahead and I put this in there, you can see how there's a lot of space and room around this, and that's a perfect size. But the other issue, again, still is when I turn it to the side, it's coming out a little too far. Your eyeball should never be bigger, never be bigger and higher in depth than your cheeks and or the brow especially. The brow is highest, then the cheeks, and then the eyeball. So remember that very important proportion. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this out, I'm gonna cut it in half, so that it's gonna be lower in depth, and then I'm gonna drop it in both. Here we go. Now, as you're seeing me do this, I am just gonna go ahead and again tell you that this needs to be half the size of the actual eye orbit, and it's a little bit like surgery. I'm gonna explain it like that because you have to put a very small eyeball inside of a pretty small socket, so this can become a little cumbersome. You'll see me having a little bit of a hard time centering this, but it's pretty easy if you go ahead and you just use your tools properly. So you'll see me use my wooden tool in order to properly place this. Again, as you're doing this, definitely make sure that your eyeball is in the dead center middle of the face. So here we go. You can see that I've dropped my eyeballs into their exact sizes and their exact placements. Make sure that your eyes aren't too far apart, nor should they be too close together as well. So now let's move on to our next step, which is finishing off our eyes, because what we need to do is we need to add some eyelids, and we need to also kind of backfill and smooth in some of this, because at this moment, this person looks very skeletal, as if they haven't slept in about a week and a half. So we're gonna fix that now. So as you go about creating your eyelids, just fair warning, it's gonna be really careful, really precise work. You're gonna see me use a wooden tool. You're gonna see me also whip out a rubber nib tool. I really love these tools, but it's just really fine work. You wanna make sure that the little coils that you're gonna add on or the eyelids are just gonna be really small, really tiny. They're not gonna be too big. Another thing that you wanna make sure as you're doing this is that you definitely at no point do you make the eyeball start to look like some kind of almond. That's a really rookie mistake, because the eyeball needs to stay circular the entire time you're working with it. Even as you add the eyelids on top of it, you want to make sure that you're not pushing in too much, you're not carving it too much to look too almondy. That is, unless of course that's something that you're going for, if you're trying to go for a certain ethnicity. Otherwise, you want to definitely make sure that you just keep that round and open look. All right, so at this point, I don't have too much left to do. You can see that I've gone ahead and I have completed all of the eyelids. So now, a couple things that I am about to do. I'm gonna finish up my nose. I just quickly pinched in here. I noticed the nose is a little wide. I'm gonna fix up my nose too, because when I turn her to the side, she's apparently part bird, and this is quite the honker right here. So I'm gonna fix this up. I'm gonna also add on 2 individual spheres on either side flanking the nose right here, and that'll be for the nostrils. I'm also gonna fix up the lip. So just to give you an important anatomical lesson, the middle of your eyes mark the end of the lip. So dead middle of the eyeball, this should be where the lips end. I'm also gonna start to carve out the curvature of the lips. There should definitely be some more mass down here on the bottom lip than the top lip. This thing is stupidly overplumped at the moment. And then I'm also just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna round off my head, because this typically happens a lot just from you pressing down on it and such. It starts to get this indent right here, and then we start to look like gorillas, and that does look good. So these are just the final things I'm gonna wrap up right now. You have an anatomically correct human face. Now, one really important thing to remember that you're doing as you are sculpting this the entire time is you have to use your references, and you need multiple angles of it. I've got 3 different angles again that I've been using throughout this entire tutorial. I did not make this out of my head. Neither should you. I do not recommend that unless you have a phenomenal amount of skill, in which case you probably don't need to watch this anyways, because you already know how to do this. But just some important things that I want to make sure that you're kind of honed into as you're creating this process. Make sure that you don't make the nostrils too big. They should basically align with the tear ducts of the eyes. Make sure that the lips don't exceed the middle of the eyeballs themselves too. Be careful when you're handling this kind of project too, because especially this is so small. So again, you can see this fits nicely in the palm of my hand. So this is pretty small. When you're dealing with this, you definitely saw me drop it while I was making this. And just make sure that you're not pressing in, but just be aware that you probably are. That's why I had to add on this mask right here. That kind of just naturally happens. You want to make sure too that you have enough back of the skull as well. And then finally, yeah, just make sure that you have proper depth with everything. Check your profile. Profile is the most important angle that you want to pay attention to from here. Now, one last and final tip for you before I leave you today, which is when you go ahead and you add your neck on to this, all right, when you want to make the rest of your character here, make sure that it sits right about here. You want to make sure you don't put it too forward, because yeah, that looks really strange and derpy. You don't want to put it too far back, then it starts to look like ET. So right around there, right in the middle, so you have a little bit of overlap right there. Okay, so now that you know how to do this better, definitely go ahead and use the system and share it with people so that we can all create better looking human faces. Thanks so much for watching this, y'all. This has been the Art Mentor. Hey, if you have something you want me to explore in a future video, definitely drop it down below in the comments, because what matters to you matters to me. Thanks so much for watching, y'all. See you next time.